Let's go live to the former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, who joins us now. Tony Abbott, in 2015, when Noel Pearson had proposed the idea of the voice in the first place, you told the journalist Michael Gordon that you warned advocates of strong constitutional recognition that they will probably end up with a proposal that won't pass. Is that warning, are we seeing that eventuate tonight, Mr Abbott?
Kieran, this is the referendum that Australia should never had to have. It was always a terrible mistake on a subject as sensitive as this for the Prime Minister to put something to the people that was always likely to fail. And what's happened tonight is that the Australian people have voted for equality and against separatism, and that's the right thing that the people have done. And the fact that the No campaign was led by two magnificent Australian heroes who happen to be Indigenous, Jacinta and Warren Mundine, is one of the very big reasons why the country has voted as it did.
When you supported the Recognition Act to Parliament 10 years ago, you said that you believe that we are equal to the task of completing our constitution rather than changing it. Is this still your position, that this was far too ambitious for the Australian people to accept, for bipartisanship to be achieved around?
Kieran, this wasn't a referendum about recognition. It was a referendum about dramatically changing our system of government. As Malcolm Turnbull said some years ago, the voice would be a third chamber of Parliament. As distinguished constitutional law professors have said, with its own chapter in the Constitution, the voice would have been a fourth arm of government, joining the legislative, the judicial and the executive arms. So this was a big change in the way we govern that's been rejected tonight. Aboriginal people haven't been rejected tonight. It's a radical power grab by an activist class. That's what's been rejected tonight. So I would certainly say to any Aboriginal person who's feeling disappointed, you have not been rejected. What's been rejected is a proposal that never should have been put. Never, ever should have been put. It wasn't about recognising you, it was about changing our system of government. And what we need to do now is focus on bringing Aboriginal people, or giving Aboriginal people far more ability to enter the Australian mainstream. We've got to get the kids to school, we've got to get the adults to work, we've got to keep the communities safe, particularly in remote Australia, because that's where the dreadful disadvantage that all of us want to end predominates. And I think tonight is not a vote against change, it's a vote for the right change, not the wrong change, and concentrating power in the hands of activists in Canberra. That was the wrong change.
Tony Abbott, it's Peter Credlin. I mean, a lot of criticisms come from Labor front benches who we have interviewed tonight towards Peter Dutton, saying that the time in the polling where things turned against this referendum was when Peter Dutton announced he would no longer be bipartisan, or couldn't see that he could support the Prime Minister's voice. But I guess it's not the job of the opposition to be bipartisan, I suppose, with a bad idea. What do you say to the critics of Peter Dutton?
Well, I think Peter Dutton was very courageous over this. There were many people who said that the polls were with the voice and he should have just gone with the flow. But he said, no, the voice is wrong in principle and it would be bad in practice. And the job of the opposition is not to go along with something that is against the long-term national interest. The job of the opposition is often to say no, and saying no to the divisive voice was, as we've often said, saying yes to constitutional equality. That's what it was. It was about saying yes to Australians going forward together as one united people. And The kind of recognition that I was always in favour of, Peter, was including in the preamble some new words after the existing words, one indissoluble federal commonwealth, to include these new words with an Indigenous heritage, a British foundation and an immigrant character, because they're true. They would have brought us together, and they've got something in them for everyone. And let's face it, the Constitution, all of it, should belong to all Australians. We shouldn't have different parts of it belonging to some Australians. And I very much regret that the Prime Minister didn't go in to see Peter Dutton the instant he won the election, or soon after winning the election, and say, look, what is the kind of recognition that you think the coalition could support? And the two of them should have hammered out something which then should have been socialised with the people, which should have gone to a constitutional convention, because there was a form of recognition that could be had. But it wasn't this, because this wasn't recognition. This was, as I say, a radical change in the way Australia would have been governed, and that's why people have said no.